Community Partnerships for Equitable Landscapes and Environmental Justice, where we're going to explore the vital role that university community collaborations can play in advancing environmental justice and advancing equity. This event, in recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. Day, is co-sponsored by the Environmental Innovations Initiative, Penn Sustainability, and the Netter Center for Community Partnerships. Our panelists will share insights from their work within Academically Based Community Service classes, or ABCS, in which campus and community partners work together to create impactful change. For instance, in Dr. Herman's archaeology ABCS courses, students have the opportunity to conduct ground sensing research to reconstruct the original layout and histories of lost African American burial landscapes, and analysis and convey their findings alongside those who care for the spaces today. In Dr. Servan's City Planning ABCS course, students support equitable and sustainable urban development by working with community organizations and centering community needs. Both of these partnerships work to counter the legacy of environmental racism in the greater Philadelphia region. This panel will showcase the campus partners and campus members that are partaking in this important work, convey insights into how these campus community collaborations are executed and sustained, and provide a close look at local organizations' missions. We hope that today's discussion will inspire you, broaden your perception of environmental justice, and provide opportunities to learn about local organizations and partnerships that are making a real impact. After hearing from our panel, we'll open the floor to questions, which you can put in the chat for our moderator to read. And I'll hand it over to our panel moderator, Jasmine Ricks, who's the Senior Research Program Coordinator at the Water Center, to facilitate panelist introductions and introduce herself as well. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kate. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Community Partnerships for Equitable Landscapes and Environmental Justice. As Kate mentioned, my name is Jasmine Ricks, and I'm honored to serve as your moderator today. My work focuses on advancing equity and resilience in underserved communities. As the Senior Research Program Coordinator at the Water Center, I support collaborative research and applied initiatives addressing environmental challenges at both local and global scales. My approach is rooted in transparent, trust-based partnerships that center the voices of those most impacted by environmental justice issues. Today's discussion brings together 4 remarkable panelists whose work exemplifies what meaningful university community collaboration looks like. Their collective experiences shed light on redressing historical inequities, expanding our understanding of environmental justice, and as you'll hear more about today, their work guides us towards more inclusive and equitable landscapes. I'm pleased to introduce Ms. Bertha Jackman from Mount Zion AME Church in Devon, Pennsylvania, Dr. Jason Ehrman, an anthropological archaeologist in Penn's Department of Anthropology, Ms. Jasmine Velez of the Kensington Corridor Trust, and Dr. Lisa Servin from the Weitzman School of Design, whose research includes the study of urban poverty, community and economic development, and other related issues. As a very brief run of show, each panelist will briefly introduce themselves and their work, and then we'll move into a moderated Q&A session. And then we'll have an open Q&A towards the last 10 to 15 minutes of our discussion today. We're so excited for everyone joining to learn about this incredible work going on. So as you listen, we highly encourage you to share your insights in the webinar's chat feature. And any questions that you have, please use the Q&A button and put your questions in there as you think of them. If you have a question for a specific panelist, please be sure to refer to them directly in your question. And then towards the end of the hour, I'll transition to questions and that we see in the chat, and I'll read them aloud. Thank you all for joining us. So let's begin by hearing from our panelists. Ms. Bertha Jackman, could you give a brief introduction of who you are and your work?
Yes, good morning. My name is Bertha Jackman, and I am the church historian from Mount Zion AME Church, African Methodist Episcopal Church in Devon, Pennsylvania. That's out in Chester County, outside of the city. And I'm also involved in other groups that talk about and are about preservation and conservation of historical sites and cemeteries. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertha. Dr. Jason Ehrman.
Hey, I'm the Kowalski Family Teaching Specialist for Digital Archaeology in the Center for the Analysis of Archaeological Materials, which is based in the Penn Museum. I consider myself a landscape archaeologist, which means I specialize in specialize in understanding the distribution of sites, how humans affected the landscape, how people in the past were influenced by the landscape. But also I specialize in the use of digital and remote sensing technologies like aerial photos, satellite data, data from things like ground penetrating radar to reconstruct the past.
Thank you, Jason. Ms. Jasmine Velez.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Velez, and I'm the Development and Communications Manager for the Kensington Corridor Trust. We are the country's first neighborhood trust and the only one focused on commercial corridors. Essentially, what that means is that we purchase real estate on Kensington Avenue, and it's collectively owned by the community. Our work is predominantly and actually only focused on the Kensington neighborhood, and that's defined by the 19134 zip code and certain boundaries that I can showcase later on. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Jasmine. And Dr. Lisa Servin.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, and thanks for joining. My name is Lisa Servan. I teach in the Department of City Planning in the Weitzman School of Design, and my own research focuses largely on how financial systems affect people in different ways, especially how people who tend to be low income, people of color, women. And I'm looking a lot right now at incarceration and how that exacts both very steep financial costs on people who are involved in the criminal legal system and their families. But the work I'm here to talk about today with Jasmine is our partnership work. I teach a couple of courses that are ABCS courses for the Netter Center, and really love partnering with community organizations like Kensington Corridor Trust. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Lisa. And perfect closer, because it actually leads into my first question. For Jason and Lisa, could you describe the course that you have at Penn and the ABCS course that you just mentioned and the goals of the course?
I can go, I guess, since I'm up, since I'm on the screen right now. I teach a couple of ABCS courses, but the one that we're talking about today is a course it's a capstone course in community and economic development that I teach for students in our Masters of City Planning program who are at the end of their time. So the idea is that we partner with a community organization. We usually partner with a few every year, and then I'll work with Jasmine and with Adriana, who's the executive director of Kensington Corridor Trust in this example, to craft a problem that or a piece of work that KCT or the other community organization really needs done. But I like to help organizations that maybe have not as much capacity to do what they want to do. When we started working with KCT, they were a one-person organization. Now I think KCT has 5 staff members, which is great, but there's always more work to do than they can do. And oftentimes our students have the skills that can actually push an idea forward. And so the students, we come up with this project, and then the students work for all 15 weeks of the semester on researching, digging deep, making sure that the product that they're producing is going to be useful to the organization, and then hopefully giving them whether it's a report or a PowerPoint or another product that helps them push the work that they want to do forwards.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes, I teach 2 courses that are ABCS courses, and they both kind of address the same problem. Intro to Digital Archaeology is a dual level course where students kind of get to try out different parts of the whole suite of digital tools that archaeologists use in the field today. Starting with managing data in a data management system, to using geographic information systems, to using remote sensing technologies like aerial and satellite data or things from near-surface geophysics, and in 3D modeling and visualization. My other course is a graduate level course, Intro to Archaeological Geophysics, where they focus on using technologies like earth resistance, ground penetrating radar, magnetometry to make maps of buried cultural deposits without disturbing them. All of my kind of focus is in non-invasive approaches to archaeology, so there's no destruction. And in both of these, we work with people like Ms. Jackman or other cemetery stewards to map cemeteries, to relocate cemeteries that have been destroyed or lost, through analysis of historical records, to connect cemetery rosters with the material remains that we find on the surface, or to otherwise document lost and unmarked graves. So students get to trial all these technologies throughout. They coordinate with the cemetery stewards at the beginning, and then in cases where they choose to take a project further, they present their results at the end of the semester to the cemetery stewards.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you so much, Jason and Lisa. Actually, and so my next question actually gets at the partnerships between you both and Jasmine and Bertha. So for you both, how did your partnership with Jason and Lisa begin, and what did you initially hope would come out of this partnership? And we could start with Bertha, if you like.
Okay. My relationship started with Jason back in early January of 2021. And the way that happened was I am a member of a group called the Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds. We focus on looking for, locating, and honoring Civil War veterans, the soldiers and the sailors, the USCTs and the African American sailors. And we also focus on looking for and trying to, just connect with African American cemeteries across the state. This is all in Pennsylvania. So it's just ongoing. Well, one of the other board members back in early January 2021 sent and forwarded an email to myself and another board member in the area about this young man who's looking for cemeteries for his students to work with. And I called him immediately, expecting a recording. And of course, he and I ended up talking for a good half hour, 45 minutes. We made a date when he could come out to my cemetery and another one, and which is what he did. And that was how we began. The goal was to eventually do ground penetrating radar or any other methods to look for the grave sites in the cemeteries, and then to eventually have Dr. Herman and his class do a report, which they have been doing, and then eventually do presentations, which he has done with my church, Mount Zion AME Church in Devon, and then across the state and outside the state with Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds. So that's how we met, and that's what's been happening, and it's ongoing. And since then, Dr. Herman has been working with other cemeteries. So it's been a great collaboration, and I'm just honored to be involved in such a collaboration.
Thank you so much, Bertha. And Jasmine?
We were connected by a former student of Lisa's. I think it was in 2021. As Lisa mentioned, it was when Adriana was just a team of one. She was solely the only staff member at the Kensington Corridor Trust. Now, as she's mentioned, we've grown into a team of 5 full-time staff, which is incredible. But our hope really was that the students would be able to help us visualize some of the goals for the Kensington Corridor and really taking into account the community's needs and perspective. And I think that we've gotten that and probably more. Speaking from my own, time with the students, it's really been beautiful to see how the finished products of the design have been helpful to create something tangible that we can share and show with community members, with potential funders. And so, yeah, I would say that I think our initial hopes were really just to get some designs and really just push forward for our work more. And we've really just seen something even more beautiful than that. I think that it's been truly a collaborative experience. I think that the students bring fresh and creative ideas to Kensington Corridor Trust, which is, really helpful for us because they're bringing in a different perspective on the design piece that maybe we wouldn't have that expertise in. And I think beyond that, being able to having the students intern with us over the summers has been incredibly helpful for us on the capacity front, but also just to see folks being able to engage from the community with them, having them be part of that design process whenever possible. It's really been a great experience. We actually have a lunch with one of the interns this afternoon, so it really goes to show that these partnerships go beyond just a semester or a summer, but we're truly really a collaborative effort from both KCT and Penn and the students, and nonetheless, it's a really a beautiful full circle moment, I think. But yeah, definitely got more than maybe we even hope for. And I say that, with true appreciation. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. My apologies for putting you right back on the spot, but I am curious. You mentioned your organization, Kensington Corridor Trust, and a neighborhood trust as well. Could you go into detail about what that is? You also mentioned students working on visuals. What does that look like in the course of your work? How have visuals helped to support your organization?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we're the country's first neighborhood trust. Essentially, what that means is that we purchase real estate on Kensington Avenue, which is collectively owned by the neighborhood, and then we direct investments on the corridor that preserve culture and affordability while building neighborhood power and wealth. Kensington is one of the neighborhoods in the city that is highly gentrifying, and it puts residents at risk for displacement. And so, our goal is really to preserve pockets of affordability for the residents now and for the future. For Philadelphia, many of us know that the household AMI is about 114,000 per year, but that's taking into account sort of the medium, or excuse me, the surrounding counties' incomes as well. In Philadelphia, we're probably closer to about 57,000. When we're talking about Kensington, we're talking about a community whose household income is probably just under $25,000 a year. So preserving deep affordability for us is vital, especially when we want to ensure long-term affordability, when we want to ensure that these folks who are here now can live here today and in the future. And then, beyond that, we believe that any of the assets that we're acquiring, any of the buildings that we're rehabbing or building, also deserve to be beautiful, sustainable, and really driving forth the environmental impacts that are driving forth a positive environmental impact in the community. Kensington also experiences high rates of extreme heat in the summer, and so there's a lot of things that we need to think about whenever we're building a space or acquiring a space beyond just making it a habitable building or a unit, right? It's really thinking about a holistic approach. And so some of the ways that the students' design has really helped support this work is by creating visuals. Can I share my screen by any chance?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I have one particular design in mind. I think this was from a 2023 students, but just helping us visualize ways that we can continue to make an impact on the Kensington corridor, whether that's adding lighting or adding more street trees or thinking about our community garden space. This is a picture of what it looks like, what it looked like in 2023. There's been some changes since then, but helping us envision how we can make an environmental impact in the future, but also making these spaces welcoming for community residents so that they can go into the garden and talk to their fellow community members, and build those relationships with each other. It's all a holistic approach, right? We cannot just look at one thing and expect that it's going to, fix decades of disinvestment and environmental injustices that impact the Kensington community. And so, yeah, again, all of this comes together, I think, to create, one solution to some of the issues, and having these designs helps us advocate for community members, and also reach out for funding whenever possible to make some of these things happen. How wonderful would it be to have this bump out area on the street, which I know is from personal experience, how difficult it is to cross from one side to the other, right? All of these things make a huge difference on a person's quality of life. So yeah, that's one way I think. But there's plenty others, but I'll stop there.
No,
Did that
thank you.
answer?
Yeah. My next question is actually can be jointly answered either by you, Jasmine, or you, Lisa, as well. So thinking about Kensington and the neighborhood, the development potential of the area and what the city has mentioned about it, how do you balance economic security for the residents there, the goals of your organization, and encroaching development in the area too?
Jasmine, you should probably start since you guys are driving the strategy, but I can talk a little bit about the project we did about gentrification once you're done.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, our goal is to preserve affordability, but that can mean a lot of different things depending on who you're talking to. I mentioned that AMI difference, right, in the city of Philadelphia, but when we talk about affordable housing, we're targeting units that are between 30 to 60% AMI on average. Sometimes it goes as high as 80, but on average, they've been between 30 and 60%.
And my
We're really
apologies, what is AMI?
average medium income. My apologies
No.
in the neighborhood, in the city. Yeah. Um, and for us, to date, we've acquired 30 assets that are perpetually protected, meaning that they will never be sold. They are perpetually held by community members, and they have full decision and autonomy around what happens to those buildings, how profits get reinvested back into the neighborhood. And then I think really what's important to that is that these units are maintained at an affordable rate for folks in the community. 30 assets translates into 50 units of affordable housing, and about 20 commercial corridors, commercial spaces, storefronts that are a potential opportunity for someone who wants to open up their first business and maybe would have had a difficult time finding a storefront on a traditional lease end. We're really intentional about making sure that community has a voice and a say in what storefronts are coming onto the avenue, as well as how again at some point when profits get made, how those get reinvested back into the neighborhood, and that can look like something as simple as adding lighting onto the park or adding more green spaces into certain areas, right? We're really intentional about that front, and to do that, we have two governing bodies that are part of our organization that really are pushing and driving a lot of our decision making. Um, so they've already outlined things and parameters around what we can and cannot attract onto Kensington Avenue, what sorts of things they would like to see in the long term and in the future. And so when we think about displacement and gentrification, part of the issue is that folks do not have a say in what's happening in their neighborhoods or their communities. They're not necessarily that front of house voice in any process, right? They're very much just pushed out of their communities. And so I think what makes us unique and different is that we're really intentionally pushing community residents to be there, to take up space because it is their space and it's their community. And who knows the neighborhood better than community residents? Um, and I think that that's what makes it unique. It's been really great to see community members and the young people give their opinions around what's happening in the community. We had a young, he's a trust stewardship committee member the other day say, wow, I can't believe I just made a decision that potentially is going to have an impact in 5, 10 years. So we're not talking about something that's going to happen tomorrow. We're talking long game and a long strategy here to make sure that this community can stay for current residents and legacy residents of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
And I'll
Yeah.
just piggyback to say, so I think Jasmine did a great job of kind of like showing what the mission and the strategy of KCT is. And then what we do is we kind of come in behind that and, I'll approach the staff in the fall. Usually my course takes place in the spring and say, like, what are you guys working on? What do you need help with? And so a couple of years ago, Adriana said to us, look, we have this goal of purchasing all this land and these buildings along the corridor, but we're really worried about gentrification and, what those pressures are. And we've seen Fishtown, which, if folks know their Philadelphia geography, is very close to Kensington, go through a process of gentrification. So our students came in and they did this whole analysis of looking at various different metrics, comparing Kensington to Fishtown, and then looked at things like how many construction permits had been processed for the neighborhood. What are the trends on those? Those are an indicator that people are buying the properties and maybe fixing them up. What was the ownership like? Were they owned by individual people or by LLCs, maybe investors from outside of Philadelphia who were just buying those properties and sitting on them because they wanted to wait until they made a profit? And so that's the kind of thing that, perhaps the folks at KCT have the skills to do, perhaps not, but don't always have the time to do that, like devote 5 students' work all semester long to producing that kind of thing. And then KCT can take that work, that report, those visuals, the kinds of things that Jasmine showed on screen, use it to raise money, use it to identify maybe properties or blocks that they want to target. And so, as Jasmine mentioned before, it's really a collaborative process. And I think, the other thing I want to underscore is that when I start to work with a community organization, assuming they want to keep working with us, first of all, like we'll never go someplace where we're not invited in. We don't just kind of barge in. Oftentimes, the students don't get to work directly with community members. They've never seen these students. The students are going to be in and out in 3 months, right? So, how do we create a relationship that's long lasting? And I think that's really important, especially for a predominantly white institution like Penn. A lot of the students have never been to Kensington. So how do we kind of move at the speed of trust? And then hopefully working year after year, I'm kind of the consistent person and the folks at KCT are the consistent person, but we've built that trust that allows us to get to know each other better, that allows new students to come in and build on the work of the folks who came before.
That's incredible. And as Jasmine mentioned as well, there aren't many examples of this in the country at all. I think this is an incredible example. I already have so many questions coming in that I'll transition back to towards the end. My final question before I transition to the work of Bertha and Jason is: are these properties spread throughout the neighborhood of Kensington, or how does the spread of these owned properties look like?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, I can also just share a quick map to show you how they are how they are spread across the avenue. If you go into our website, which is kctphilly.org, for anyone interested, you go under About Us, and then there's a resource center, and there's also an area called Stewarded Properties, which I'll share here. You can see that right now we're really intentional about acquiring within just a few block radius and really not planning on purchasing too scattered along Kensington Avenue, even though we can technically acquire between Lehigh and Glenwood. Right now, we're highly focused between Allegheny and Tioga, for those who are familiar with that geography. So these are the 30 assets across. It's just a few block radiuses. So between here and here, it takes less than a few minutes to walk to this block, and then another few minutes to walk here, maybe a 10 to 15-minute walk, depending on your own pace. But really, it's intentional. We are trying to build in density because we want to create that visual impact and show and allow community members and those small businesses to build that sense of community with each other. So it's really important for us to have these small businesses next to each other as much as possible so that they can, hey, maybe knock on that other storefront and say, hey, how's your day going? Or, hey, are you experiencing something today, a challenge that maybe I can help you with, or vice versa, right? And it really helps to build that sense of community between folks. And then as the work continues, right now you can see we started acquiring highly densely on one side of the block, but now we're starting to move across the street. So again, still really focused in this region. And then the largest kind of continuous buildings here or not buildings, but spaces here are actually our community garden space. So it's a land conservation effort. We have all native pollinators here, and some small vegetable gardens at the request of community members. But yeah, everything here is really intentionally purchased between Allegheny and Tioga, and yeah, on that dense end. Eventually, we'll start moving. We could start moving into other areas. So again, if you're familiar with the neighborhood, we might go down into the 3,000 block of Kensington and so forth. But we're not quite ready for that yet. Community members have also asked us if we would ever move outside of the avenue, and really our mission is to focus on the commercial corridor end, so that's not a plan for the moment. If we ever were to move, we would have to meet that goal and mission of why we were started to begin with. But that's not to say it can't happen. It's just, not the primary focus at the moment. Did that answer your question? Did I miss anything?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's such a striking visual seeing like the strength of KCT along Kensington Ave. Thank you. So I actually will transition to the work of Ms. Bertha Jackman, Dr. Jason Ehrman. My first question actually goes straight back to you, Bertha. We mentioned in our conversations earlier that your work is supported by the African American Burial Preservation Act. Could you explain what that is and how that's helped to support the work that you're doing?
Yes, the African American Burial Preservation Act came about within the last several years, and it has been passed by the federal government, but the problem now is getting the budget passed. I think there's been a few efforts, and it just hasn't happened yet. And the one part about that whole and about it is supposed to focus on African American cemeteries across the nation and how to support it, to recognize them, how to support them. And right now the budget is calling for, I want to say $3 million, which is definitely not efficient, but I guess they need to start somewhere. So the fact that it has passed does have an impact, and the funding will basically be going through the National Park Service. They're looking forward to being able to offer grants and that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to put that quickly. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the area, Devon, Pennsylvania, it's not far from Valley Forge. The large park focusing on American Revolutionary artifacts and history and things like that. Do you feel like there's similar, or is there collaboration between your two groups, or do you feel like there's similar support either among the National Park Service or the federal government to preserve historic burial landscapes of Civil War veterans? Civil War soldiers.
Offhand, I would say no, but that's not necessarily the case. Devon is near Villanova University, if you have any idea where that is, which is on Lancaster Avenue in Villanova. Devon, and as you mentioned, Devon is not, actually it's like right next to the National Valley Forge National Park. And as far as the collaboration recently, the association, there was an association that was working with the National Park Service to do a study about the participation of African Americans in the Valley Forge, Park when George Washington and his soldiers were there in the winter of 1777, going into 1778. And not only that, but this young man did a study about all of the African American military that participated at Valley Forge. And those were people who came from Rhode Island, from a lot of different places. And one of the outcomes that I was very interested in is that not only the military who participated, but who were the people who supported the military. So you're talking about non-military people. And apparently, happily, some of them came from Tredyffrin Township, which is where Devon, Pennsylvania is located. So yes, there has been that collaboration. Also, just recently, Mount Zion last year celebrated its 175th church anniversary. And the theme for that luncheon anniversary and throughout the year was celebrating the first. So the superintendent, of Valley Forge National Park and some other places is an African American woman. She was the first African American woman to be the superintendent of Valley Forge National Park. So she was one of the ones that was honored and at our luncheon. So that's where another connection between Mount Zion and Valley Forge took place.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My next question can be answered either by you, Ms. Bertha, or you, Jason, as well. So we had Jasmine and Lisa talk about visual landscapes and showed some visuals of the spread of their work throughout the Kensington neighborhood. Could you talk about, one, the role of students in your work, but also how digital archaeology and landscape digitals have helped to exemplify the goals and mission of your course and your organization?
Yeah, so actually I'll zoom out a little more, and I just want to highlight the contribution that archaeology itself can make to social justice. In the last 5 to 10 years, archaeology is kind of, as many people have, reflected on its past and its colonial past, its imperial past, and many of us have sought ways to kind of redirect our efforts to tell the story, use the strength of archaeology, which is to tell the story of people whose histories aren't written, to kind of reconcile some of the injustices of the past. So that's kind of what we're doing here through these non-invasive methods, working with people like Ms. Jackman. Cemeteries, I also want to connect our work with the amazing stuff you guys are doing in Kensington. Cemeteries are kind of a durable remnant of the same processes that Jasmine and Lisa are trying to protect Kensington from, political and social forces that move communities out of the spaces where they once lived. And this was true for African American communities, both in urban and rural sites. Now, our class is mostly working with rural sites, or what were rural sites, like the area around Mount Zion and Devon. So what we do is we will go out and initially kind of survey the land. The class itself is a methods class. So students are mostly there to learn how to use these methods in the field. But what they actually kind of take away is also that archaeology is about people in the end. And we learn this by, one, connecting the results we find out in the field with the histories of the people that we're researching. And then also we learn it's about people by actually connecting directly with descendants or people interested in reconnecting with their past, and trying to reconnect these links between the communities and these cemeteries, which are, no longer physically associated, right? So I can show a couple slides to kind of demonstrate the technologies that we're using. Let's see if this works out. And we'll have to. We use a lot of drones. Let me go back, actually. Ground penetrating radar and other mapping technologies, which, sorry, I've gotten off the slides here, guys.
No, beautiful, beautiful visuals.
Yeah, thank you. Here we are. Mostly what we do is work across the landscape using high precision mapping techniques, some satellite guided global satellite survey network, what we would call it colloquially GIS or GPS, to map the locations of headstones. We then link that with historic maps and 3D depictions of the surface to identify spots in the cemeteries where headstones may have been removed, damaged, or otherwise destroyed. So we can identify spots where likely there were graves that are now unmarked. Then we take something like these technologies we can see on the screen, ground penetrating radar to the left or electrical resistance on the right, and make a map of what's going on underground. These are not silver bullets. It's never going to always, it's not 100% guaranteed to work, but the students get to learn how to collect these data and interpret them. And it really helps to have a really good idea of what's going on in the landscape to guide students' interpretations down the road. The kind of maps we return look like this. On the left, we see kind of a more, objective picture of the subsurface and an interpretation in the middle. On the right, we just see a very high resolution depiction of the ground surface and the undulations of the topography. And you can see those little stains in there indicate likely burial spots that are unmarked by the little white headstones. And I'll just show you one more slide. We're also using aerial methods like LiDAR and photogrammetry, both based by drones. These are two different ways to record three-dimensional information, and we can make like really rich interpretations of the ground, like this one from Lindley Hill on the right, which is actually a fly-through, which you can do online later on. And then we can use these kinds of interpretations also to pick out sunken grave shafts that are no longer associated with a monument.
And when these, and when a possible site or sites are identified, what is the next step for, what is the next step?
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't go discovering sites because we need to be invited by whoever the steward is, right, of this cemetery. And after, working with Ms. Jackman, other people have heard about what we're doing, and we have we take up some invitations. I wish I could do them all, but there's only so many hours in the day. But then when we do it, what we'll do is we'll do two things. One, I will integrate these efforts with just course content, so lessons that they have to work through in class together or part of their homework assignment. And then students have the option of taking these field efforts or developing one that kind of branches off that connects to a cemetery and doing a final project that then they would take to Miss Jackman or whoever the cemetery steward is that we're working with. One example of this, for example, was a custom online data entry form for recording headstones in the field. And the student made this, and anybody can use it. It's free and open source. They can open it on their cell phone. Then they can go out and record all the headstones that are extant. It creates a map and statistics for all these automatically, and then they can generate a report. And it's a good baseline for further historic preservation efforts by the steward or us or someone else.
Thank you. And how many sites have graves have been identified using these methods?
With Miss Jackman, we've worked at two. Mount Zion AME in Devon is associated with their local cemetery, and then another one which is has multiple names, but Ebenezer AME. Both of them are quite early, and Ebenezer AME, which is farther out in Fraser, is part of the early AME expansion out from Philadelphia. Part of this spread of a uniquely American church. We worked at the other ones. We worked at Lindley Hill in
Is that Mother Archie's?
Yeah, Mother Archie's. We've worked at Byberry Cemetery in Northeast Philly, Eden Cemetery in Collingdale, and
Did you do Thornberry out in
Thornberry? Thank you.
Yes.
That was the one. So those are the ones we've worked on so far. I want to add one last thing is it's the hardest part about this ABCS course, which is not hard. It's extremely fulfilling and fun. But because we're working with usually volunteers, and because these cemeteries are not close to campus, and we'd have to dedicate the better part of a day to working in the field, we work on weekends. So it takes the willingness of the students to go out and spend their Saturdays or Sundays out there. And we rely on the enthusiasm and willingness of people like Ms. Jackman and their dedication to the resources that they have.
Incredible work. I have so many more questions, but I do want to get to what's happening in the chat right now. And first, we have a comment by a city official, Mr. Joe James. You raised your hand. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question? Introduce yourself. Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. I'm an old guy, but I'm a former city official. In fact, I used to run a corporation called Philadelphia Citywide Development Corporation. We did a lot of neighborhood commercial revitalization. We provided funding to small businesses. I'm now a climate tech entrepreneur. And while I'm based in South Carolina, I am operating in Philadelphia, helping Philadelphia Gas Works reduce its carbon footprint by planting very special crops on their site to capture lots of carbon dioxide. Those very same crops can remediate brownfield sites, in other words, take out toxins that are in the ground to help return the sites to use. We can also create something that we call pop-up shade, using these very special crops that go from 0 to 20 feet in 6 months. And we can organize them into a semicircle that can provide shade in inner city communities that don't have trees. And there's many other things that we can do, including after we harvest the plant material, we convert it into a variety of bioproducts that will ultimately create good products, but also a bioeconomy and new jobs in that conversion. So we're beginning to deploy our process. I look forward to working with communities in Philadelphia. I look forward to working with the universities in Philadelphia, as we are in other places around the country. And I just wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to share my email address, my website, and my telephone number. And if there are communities and universities and others who wish to collaborate with us on projects in and around Philadelphia, I'd like to know that.
Thank you, Joe. I think you put it in a Q&A for us, but go ahead and pop your contact details in the chat, and that'll be preserved for us. Thank you. So I had a first question posted, is related to Jasmine, KCT, Lisa, your work. The question reads, have you reached out to Chinatown with your ideas to control the destiny of your neighborhood? It sounds like it could also, the idea of a neighborhood trust could work for them too.
Thank you for that question. We have not reached out directly around a neighborhood trust with Chinatown. That's not to say we can't be in conversation with folks. We're always willing to share our learnings with any community that's interested in learning more about neighborhood trusts. One thing that we always say, though, is that while we're working towards being replicable, it's still a work in progress, and we're not. One thing that Adriana, who's our executive director, says is that no community is grounds for experimentation, right? And so this has to come from community members themselves, and they have to be the ones who want to learn more about the neighborhood trust and request it in their communities. But yes, I mean, we're always, again, willing to have these conversations. We have had conversations with folks in New York. There's other neighborhood trusts that currently exist in Kansas City, Missouri. And so we're in constant conversation with a variety of states or even communities across the country. I also just take a moment to say that we're potentially we're going to co-host the Assembly of Black Possibilities sometime in the fall. So I'll share that information out with y'all when that's more readily available. But these are folks who are really thinking about alternative ownership models, that are thinking about solidarity economies, right? And so we are always open to being in spaces where we can have conversations that helps put community members front and center, and ensure that their voices are really the ones leading whatever changes or needs that they need to see in that community. Do you want me to move into that second question? Because I feel like it's kind of related, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So this question is can be open for everyone, but it also was pointed specifically for Jasmine. Could you describe the process for getting community members' voices involved in decision making? What are the practical details for how you ensure the community is represented and for enacting their ideas over other interests? Thank you so much for the question, Kristen.
Thank you for the question. So we have two governing bodies on our 501c3 arm. Usually there's two different requirements. You either have to live in the community or have a small business on Kensington Avenue. Initially, those board seats were not held by community members, but the initial board or the founders of KCT ceded their seats to ensure that community voices would be part of that process. On our perpetual purpose trust, which is sort of the hybrid tether between our 501c3 and that's what makes up the neighborhood trust, we went through a year-long engagement process with community members to define what neighborhood seats would exist. And terms around who can serve how long and that sort of jazz. So they defined that they wanted to see two community leaders, two residents, two small businesses, two youth seats, so anyone aged between 16 to 21 to think about succession planning and sort of the next generation, and then one cross-body member who also sits between our 501c3 and then sits on our trust stewardship committee. And again, that was a year-long engagement process. Folks decided that people needed to have lived in the neighborhood a minimum of 5 years, with preference going to folks who've been in the community for at least 10. Or again, you have to have that small business in Kensington to serve on that board. Folks serve about for 2-year terms, and they can stagger off different times depending on when they joined the trust stewardship committee. We actually have open elections every year. Right now, we're in the middle of an open election for 2 open seats for resident seats, but that happens every year. At some point, we'll be at a point where we can also do like neighborhood-wide elections for whether that's defining how profits get reinvested. Community members will have that larger input. And then lastly, beyond that, we also engage community residents whenever we're attracting a small business. And so the panelists here heard me go through the entire all the nitty-gritty details, but I'll consolidate it. If let's say you want to open a small business on Kensington Avenue, we don't just lease to you tomorrow. It's not that sort of traditional leasing model. We are really intentional about doing a community engagement strategy. We talk to community members. We go to every meeting that exists possible. We are there to present that new business or that potential new business, I should say, make sure that it's the right fit for the community and make sure that the business is also a right fit, that the community is a right fit for the business and they can engage in conversations. And then after that, if their financials and everything is approved, then we can move forward with signing on that small business. So every facet of our work is really involved in making sure that the community has a say around what happens to our spaces and how we utilize them and so forth. So, yes.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. And Joe, I do see your hand is raised. We want to get through the questions in the chat first, and if there's time, we'll transition
No,
back.
the chat is not open. I can't put my information in.
Oh, I will copy and paste it in.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why. Yeah, I'll copy it right then. Ms. Bertha, yep, I wanted to transition the question to you next and speak about your role in community voices, engagement, and ensuring their voices are powerfully represented.
Yes, as far as trying to get the communities involved, we're seeing across the board. When I say we, I'm talking about Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds and just other groups. One of the best ways to get the community involved is looking at the descendants who are buried in these cemeteries. They are the closest ones, they have the closest connection to those that are buried. But there are all kinds of groups who've been around for a long time. Some of them are brand new. And when I say groups, we're talking about people who are descendants, people who are veterans, educators, archaeologists, all kinds of people who are interested in maybe their local cemeteries and trying to get together to maybe first clean up the cemetery. A lot of cemeteries have been what they call abandoned, meaning that there were cemeteries in a particular location, but the people moved away for whatever reason. So therefore, the cemetery is still there, and some people will call it abandoned or neglected. So you have folks who are trying to get together to clean up cemeteries, to find headstones. And if you can't find the headstones, then you start doing research, such as looking for newspaper articles as to where people are buried. There's a website called Find a Grave that has all kinds of information about cemeteries and people interred in them. You can connect with your local political people to help, get funding or just to be involved in spreading the word about what's going on in that cemetery. It's a wide range of activities that can be done, but I won't go into them now. But I do want to say that I'm going to give you an example. Tonight, there are going to be two programs happening. First of all, Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds, we have what we call a Stewards Roundtable, and we're looking at the stewards and anybody else is interested. And what we do is every so many times a year, we have a presentation. Tonight's presentation is a person from the National Park Service who works with the Underground Railroad projects. And when we have our roundtables or when we have our annual meeting, which is, this year is October 19th, 18th, is always in the fall, we have people who get who get online, not just from Pennsylvania, but from across the nation. So when we talk about cemeteries, it's not just in Pennsylvania. We're talking about the care of cemeteries, who owns these cemeteries, because that's across the board also. So when we talk about cemeteries, it's actually a nationwide, if not worldwide, phenomenon. So I just wanted to mention that as far as getting people committed. Well, you just one of the ways you say, well, do you have relatives here? Do you know of any relatives? Do you know of neighbors' relatives? And that kind of thing. The second event that's happening tonight, there's a cemetery out in Chester County called Shiloh AME Church Cemetery. It's Shiloh AME Church and Cemetery. And the property is privately owned. And this group is trying to get a historical marker for that area. And so tonight they're going to be presenting in front of the Board of Supervisors, excuse me, in the township called Westtown Township to see if they can get a historical marker, because the ground is overgrown, the church no longer exists, the building no longer exists, the gravestones have been removed. So if you look at the property, you don't really see anything. But this group wants to make sure that the community, the local community and the wider community knows that this church existed. It was deeded in 1817. Yeah. So we're talking about a church that's what, 200 years old? And so, but the reason why I'm bringing that up is because the group is made up of descendants, people who are just interested, local people who are interested, live across the street from this location, and just people in general. So yes, there's community efforts, and there are many, many different ways to get involved.
Thank you. To learn more about the events, is it pahallowgrounds.org? Would that be the best place to learn about it? Or what would be the best place if someone would like to? You mentioned that one of the events tonight actually is sold out, but it will be recorded. Where could someone go and listen to that recording?
Yes, Pennsylvania Hallowed Grounds.
Thank you.
Just look that up and you can see our website.
Thank you. And I'll just pop that in the chat. No, we're just at time here for all of our panelists here today. Thank you so much for our attendees. If you'd like to reach out individually to someone at Penn, either Dr. Lisa Servin or Dr. Jason Ehrman, if you Google their names, their information should come right up. And then for Ms. Jasmine Velez and Ms. Bertha Jackson, I put pahallowground.org's website in the chat. And then Jasmine as well, if there is a ideal link to learn more and be involved, please put that in the chat as well. We're already at time here. Kristen, I see you have your raised hand. I will allow you to unmute if you can keep it super quick. I know we're at time.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, just thank you all for your time and everything. I appreciate your answers to the questions too. But I just wanted to let you know that attendees can't see anything that you put in the chat yet. I think it's disabled for all attendees. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll aim to get the comments in the chat, which aren't too much, but comments in the chat and links distributed to everyone here today. Thank you so much for that. As we close, we encourage you all to explore the opportunities that you learned about today, whether that's getting involved in one of these local organizations or the local organizations that relate more to your interests. Enroll in courses like the ABCS courses spoken about today that focus on environmental justice or university community partnerships, or integrating the concepts into your daily lives. Thank you all so much again for joining us. We look forward to seeing how each of you can contribute to these efforts moving forward. Have a great and wonderful rest of your day. We'll stay on a little bit longer, but please enjoy your day, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.